Hey, welcome back to Pave the Way podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Greg Helbeck, and today I am with Aaron Pimpis out of the Tampa Bay, Florida market. And we're going to talk about a lot of cool stuff. Aaron's an investor who really hasn't been doing this for too long, but he has built a $1 million business very quickly. And we're going to get into how he did it and what he's doing today for marketing. So, Aaron, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, I mean, a lot of listeners are probably like, wow, this guy has, built $1 million business, $1 million plus business very quickly. And they're probably like, how the hell did he do that so quickly? So before we get into the nuts and bolts of how you did that, can you just kind of give everyone a little bit about your background and kind of what you did before you got into the real estate business?
Yeah. So I think the background is, a key reason behind it, because a lot of people, I think, that kind of get into real estate investing, wholesaling, and rehabbing because, they saw a show or they heard that, it's the way to really grow their income exponentially, right? So they usually come from different walks of life, right? But I didn't watch any of those shows. I still haven't seen any of those like rehab shows, not a single one. Like maybe I call it like a couple of minutes, but my partner Ashley and I, we used to be in private equity. I used to be in a private equity firm. She used to work for a publicly traded company. We both used to do medical sales, medical software sales, which we'll kind of dive into that later on, right? But that's been the experience for the last 7-8 years before I transitioned over. So I ran a team, this is kind of pretty high-end enterprise sales, right? You're dealing with $1 million renewable contracts. These are SaaS-based kind of systems. So based on running the sales team, about 14, 15 people, kind of doing the marketing piece, because you're feeding a lot of stuff, back into the marketing, you're getting the product suggestions, feeding into the product team. So that experience, and being at that kind of level helped me to, as soon as we transitioned over, which I quit my job in April of last year. Ashley quit a little bit before I did. And then we just went straight into it. We weren't really doing any deals prior to that. We may have like a rehab or two going, but you know how that is. You have a full-time job. Your rehab is really it's a very quarter time priority. But yeah, we just applied kind of, our experience, our background into this business, started growing the team almost right away. And, it's kind of scale from there. It's not all easy. It's not all we just we know what we're doing. We got it. There was a lot of mistakes, a lot of mishires, a lot of things. We were just very quickly to turn it over, right? Bad hire, boom, let him go. Bad marketing channel, it's not working out. We were very quick to pivot on the spot.
Yeah.
And make sure that we were, we're adjusting. One of the things I did before I actually quit my job, Greg, to give you more insight, is we went to Kent's event, the
Fine and Flip.
Fine and Flip, yep.
Yeah, in San Diego, right? Or was that I think that was in San Diego. Or
Phoenix? Was in Phoenix.
Phoenix, okay. Yeah.
That was in Phoenix. So based on that, a lot of people I think struggle with this. It's one of those it's like, how do I maybe scale up? Like we didn't have anything going on. And we joined, that mastermind. It doesn't have to be a specific mastermind. It just needs to be, I think, a credible mastermind, because you're saving yourself a year's worth.
Oh, totally.
So we just dropped it, whatever that was, on a credit card. We talked to a few people there. They're straight shooters, pretty sharp people. I'm like, look, that's our shortcut. Without thinking about it, that was, I think, in March or February. And then 2 months later, I was out on my job. And again, everything was a preparation.
Yeah.
But we saw that definitely as an opportunity to shortcut a lot of learning things on our own, where you have access directly to, kind of like the mastermind that we're in, people of that caliber.
Yeah, no, it's a fast track to success for sure. And that's, I think a lot of people get it's like, I think for me, at least, the mistake that I've made, and then obviously I'm learning now, is I did a lot of things the hard way when I started, and it took me a lot longer to kind of get to where I'm at now than it probably should have, right? And I think it was good in a sense, because I really struggled, had to earn my success. I was never making probably the type of money you were making in private equity. I was 20 years old. So it was kind of good for me to kind of, I guess, eat ramen noodles for a little bit until I started figuring it out. You kind of have to. But my question to you, man, before we get into your business today, I mean, you had a successful job, you're doing well, I'm sure, living in Tampa, looking at the palm trees all day. What made you get into real estate? Out of all businesses, I mean, I think real estate is, especially the last couple of years, it's been very popular. But what made you want to say, I want to be a wholesaler, because it's almost like you're going from one, kind of industry to a sort of a different industry, but it's still really a sales and marketing business. So why was it like wholesaling property or flipping houses?
You just said the two key words: sales and marketing. That's what it was. Real estate happened to be the widget, and it's the best widget to be in. What am I going to do? Go open up a software company right away? That doesn't make sense, right? But also, I had a background in mortgages. Like I was doing mortgages when everything went downhill. So I was doing that for a couple of years. And then after that crash, then I transitioned to like, medical software sales, et cetera. But I was doing like The Big Short and Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, that's my favorite. Yeah.
I was in those two movies in real life. Like there was an office here with 70 loan officers by like Rocky Point where I'm at now by Tampa Airport International Mall.
Yeah.
It was literally people getting up, like, yelling Recco, that kind of stuff, like insane stuff. So like I had exposure then, but again, mortgage is a completely different side to it, but you kind of like, again, like the title, property values, you get a pretty good feel and sense for it. But when everything crashed in '08, that's actually when I made the most money because the company I was with, we pivoted from subprime and all we did was prime because interest rates were dropping. And there are people we focus solely on, again, this is kind of like the real estate investor mentality because there's going to be another turn. So you have to kind of adapt. Like, what am I going to pivot to? We pivoted to states that had still a lot of equity, like, for example, Maryland, Virginia, Massachusetts, right? And we only market it to people that are prime, right? 700 plus credit scores. They have the equity in their house. They're not pulling anything out of it. And they just simply wanted to refinance for lower rates. And we absolutely killed it. Out of the 50 people I knew that were doing mortgages back then, I was pretty much the only one left. But again, that came to an end also, just, saw an opportunity to transition out of it. But that's kind of my intro into real estate. And as we, my partner Ashley and I were sitting and we're like, look, we're making really good money in what we're doing, really good money, right? Between both of us. And it was just like, the more, like we're both VPs, the more you can climb up the executive ladder, the more you can earn, like, relative terms to W-2 jobs versus what we're doing here. You get some stocks and shares, a company, et cetera, you get a little piece, but you just work more and more and more. Like I lived in LaGuardia, like the airport. I would fly there weekly.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that
airport. C-31, they're like, hey, Mr. Pimpis, how's it going? I'm like, that's just sad. But it's one of those things, you're away traveling. It's just at a certain point, you kind of have to have a reality check, like a moment of clarity, which I think most people have done, have transitioned over. And you're like, why am I doing this? Like we have 2 kids, right? And I saw the end result. I saw people above me, like the SVPs and the chief revenue officer, et cetera. Dude, you just worked yourself to the bone. Yeah, you have like $1 million in shares of stocks, whatever that would be. But like, is that worth selling your time for? So it was like a very hard reality check. And we're like, no, we don't want to do that.
Man, that's incredible. And I respect you for doing that because you guys were very successful before you. It's not like you guys were like, struggling and you're like, oh, how do I make money? Like you were already doing well and you decided to kind of take the leap of faith and obviously pivot into an entrepreneurial venture, which is, obviously it allows you to have more freedom, but at the same time, it can potentially be more risky. So let's kind of pivot into now your business today. Obviously, when did you start officially in real estate really and get into it full time? Like April of 2018?
2018, yeah.
Okay. So obviously you begin April 2018. What does your business look like today as of November 17th, 2019?
Yeah. So right now I think we have 8 people. I have 3 acquisition managers. My partner also being kind of part acquisitions. She runs the acquisition team. So technically 4 people.
Yeah.
We average about, I would say 9 to 12 deals a month.
Wow.
And right now we just moved offices a few weeks ago. So we moved into a much larger office. We'll continue to probably grow the team from there. But yeah, it's all wholesale now. We're transitioning more into creative and more into lease options because that's just, that's the play. Our goal is to be 100% off of wholesaling pretty soon, like probably say Q1 of next year.
You're trying to get all the wholesaling. So you're doing wholesaling now. You're doing 9 to 12 wholesale deals a month. So that's interesting. And you're in Tampa Bay, Florida. And I've known you for a little bit, but I just didn't really interact with you until we were at the $1 Million Meeting a couple weeks ago. Right. You said something to everyone, and I was talking to you one-on-one after, and you said that you're in Tampa Bay, you're doing deals in Tampa Bay, but you're really operating virtually in your own market. So can you just kind of explain to the listeners, like, your philosophy on that? Because it's very interesting. A lot of people are trying to do virtual investing. I do virtual investing, far away. But you're doing it in your own market. And what are some benefits that you're seeing from operating with that type of model?
So, yeah, we're doing virtually. And the main reason behind that was because we were used to doing, like enterprise sales, we would talk to doctors, these are a couple $100,000 contracts, et cetera. There might be some like, face-to-face at one point, but the deals all happen over the phone. I would close deals that are worth, we call them annual contract value, right? ACV. A couple $100,000. It's just recurring revenue through text message. But you get to that point. There's a lot of due diligence, et cetera. But people are just, they will do business over the phone. They'll do business with you. You just have to establish kind of like, how do you get there, the steps.
Yeah.
So we just took that with us, right? We try to go in the house initially and we're like, this is weird. Plus, I don't want to actually go into like, properties with some, like,
Yeah, so true, man. You know, a lot of sketchy people, man.
Exactly. So we just adapted a model, and it's really a mindset thing, right? It's the same thing you would do in person, right? You're just doing it over the phone, like pay me the picture of your house, give me a virtual tour, et cetera. But we also do is we'll do that. We do an inspection report as well. We negotiate typically $150 inspection. It's a 4-point, all the pictures we need. We actually use this kind of like engineering firm here in Tampa, so it gives it more credibility. But we get a pretty well put together report. 100+ pictures. So not only if something went awry from our discovery call, there's a roof in there and we show up, there's no roof. I'm like, dude, you told me there's a roof, there's no roof. So we have something that's very legitimate we can go back and renegotiate on. Sometimes they don't know. It's an absentee owner. They have no idea what's going on, but it gives us merit to go back and adjust the margins because we can't sell it for the same price. So the pros are really being able to, again, have the sales floor, have everybody in the office, nobody's driving around, that type of thing. The cons are you may not always get the property for as low a price as you would if you were there in person, because you can spot everything, right? You can kind of talk. You typically have better margins, and everybody will agree that if you go there in person. But at the same time, that's why we have the inspection report, right? We send it out back to the seller, either right away or later on, depending on the logistics of the deal. And we also use it for buyer marketing as well.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's very interesting how you're doing that model successfully. And it's getting more common now. I think a lot of guys, I'm sure Steve Enns and Josh Alter out in Vancouver, they're doing well.
Very well, yeah.
Yeah, they're crushing it. So I think it's the last couple of years that's become more of a popular model. And I think if you were to say this 3 years ago, people would be like, what are you talking about, man? How do you do that? Especially you're in your own market. It's not like you're, doing deals in Kentucky and you live in Florida. So It's very interesting how you're doing that. And I think it's really starting. And it's like, you know what? Like, yeah, maybe you're not going to get as many deals like closed, but you can talk to more people on the phone. Your sales guys aren't like, Tampa Bay, I've been there. It gets very crowded there. There's a lot of traffic during rush hour. Like I live in California. It's crazy to drive around here. Like, I'd rather talk to more people than have to drive all over Hell's Half Acre to maybe, have someone no-show me, right? That's 2 hours of my time. I could have talked to 20 sellers. So, the question everyone's probably thinking now is, okay, the guy's been in real estate for basically a year and a half. He's doing a lot of deals. What in the world are you doing for marketing to get the type of leads that you're getting to obviously convert 9 to 12 contracts a month?
Yeah. So, and maybe just to back up a step, right? Like if we're getting into this and, it's like, what do you do? What's the first thing?
Yeah.
Before people get all over, overwhelmed with systems, processes, SOPs, and all this other stuff. Like, you go to a meeting and you don't know where to start because you just have 20 pages of stuff to do.
Yep.
If you don't have sales and marketing dialed in, you shouldn't be doing anything else. Like you shouldn't have a CRM. Like if you're starting off, you shouldn't do anything because you need to be dialed in with sales and marketing. That's it. It's a sales and marketing game. We happen to do real estate or, we happen to sign contracts. That's kind of it. So that was the first thing we did. We had marketing dialed in. I started off at the beginning with, we did pay-per-click. I think we did SEO. We started texting almost immediately. And then we're doing a couple other things, starting off with mailers later on. But I've done basically any marketing channel that exists for real estate investing. We just ended our TV pilot, which we may go back to. Just the ROI wasn't as high as I'd like it to be. I think it's just tweaking and going through a different agency. So I've done pretty much everything. What we're doing now is texting has been the staple since day one. Out of our KPIs, if you look across the board, it's the most consistent, lowest cost per deal, and highest performing marketing channel, period. And then we'll get into it more later on. I've tried everything. Facebook is one of those things that's hard to crack. John Martinez keeps talking about the invisible funnel. I think it's just a matter of I think it'll convert. It's just not as consistent. Like you can't up the volume and expect to get 2 or 3 more deals. It's one of those like SEO.
It's a lagging channel. Like it's productive, but it's a long haul. Like it's almost like a SEO situation. Similar to SEO.
They'll come in when they come in, and you can't really control the knobs too much. But right now, so it's texting. Obviously, it's we reuse the list. So cold calling, still doing the going back to doing mailers. And you get like drips between like SEO that come in, we get stuff from retargeting, but the main thing is like, you heard me, I think, talk about this before at that meeting as well, where, it's all in the follow-up. I think a lot of people just 1-2 hit, 2, 3, 4. That's pretty much it. We pull deals like, from texting, even from a year ago. It's just a matter of engagement and everybody else drops off. It's just a matter of how well can you control your sales team if you have one, or how well is your own self-control for follow-up game, and truly seeing that through all the way into 60, 90, 120 days. And when those people are ready, you're the only one still that's left there.
Man, I'm so glad you shared that, because obviously I want to hit on the follow-up real quick, and then we'll actually deep dive into texting, because I think that's something that you shared at the meeting that blew my mind. And so it's funny you say, like, the follow-up thing, because some of the best deals I've purchased where we've made the most money with no competition is they're in the database. They're already in the CRM, and that's a big mistake that a lot of investors, I try to drill this home with people. It's like, you're going to send marketing out, you're going to text, you're going to mail, whatever you're doing. The money is in the database, because if you can get the discipline, you get your sales team to have the discipline to follow up with those leads, there's going to be no competition when they are ready to sell. Not if they're ready to sell, when they're ready to sell, because they're obviously calling you or responding to your marketing for a reason. Yep. And when you can show somebody, like, I'll give you an example. There's so many properties that, like, we get where I just got one last week. I've been following up with a guy personally for 2 years. 2 years. And he's like, dude, you're so damn persistent. You know what? I want 60. You offered me 54. Let's do 55, and I'll sell you the damn house if you show
up. He was ready.
He's ready. The house worth 150. You know what I mean? So it's like, what's that follow-up worth? Every time I called the guy, what was that, like $700 a call? You know what I mean? So it's It's like people don't get it. Like, that's where the money's at in any sales. It doesn't have to be real estate. It's like everything is in the database. Like, I think the problem is, like, the gurus make it seem like, oh, you're going to send a letter and you're going to have someone who's ready to jump off a cliff, or they're going to sell their house. And it's like, that's not the case. That's maybe once in a while that'll happen. But
that's the 20, not the 80, or maybe the 10.
Exactly. So let's kind of unpack the texting thing, because you obviously have something called Launch Control, which is a very interesting platform I've used before. I've gotten a lot of leads off of it, and it's becoming very popular now. So let's have you I'll kind of hand over the reins to you, have you kind of take us on a deep dive on, why is texting so effective now? And how are you guys kind of doing it to really, have consistency, honestly? Because that's the big thing a lot of investors struggle with, is consistency.
Right. Yeah. So what we basically did is, as soon as I got into it, we kind of built an initial platform for texting, because I saw there was nothing around, right? So I think even a few months into it, we had something kind of rudimentary that we're going after. And it was crazy to me, because texting works. It's the same reason why, I can text you right now and pick up your phone. It's not an email. It can't get buried. Like, you'll answer it right away. And, this crazy stats on, like, what 98% of people that can respond to it in the first couple of minutes. It's just texting is texting because it controls our lives. That's why. Everybody's, right? Doesn't matter if you get the jitterbug going on with the grandma, right? Or something else. Like, people just look at it. It's matter of fact. It's right there in front of you, and you can't bury it in your inbox. You can't necessarily, put it in a folder. So it's just there. So when we start doing it initially, we were getting crazy results, right? We're getting, people that were just, open to talking to us, that type of thing. And the best thing with texting is that you can send, let's say, 100 messages. Response rate's about 30% typically on average, if you have your system that's dialed in. And then about 10% of that 30, maybe 15, you can work. You can be rated as hot, warm, nurture, so we can put a drip campaign. And that's kind of how we developed Launch Control. It was built from using it internally, right? We're literally using it, and I was building the platform out of it. I saw an opportunity to take it to market, and we have well over 100 users now. I think we're like 150 at this point. But we applied that kind of logic that worked for us into code, right? So it wasn't just like theory, and I'm like, what are we going to do here? What does Greg want? It was really application, everything we're using and how we're successful. And it's really developed around a sales process and sales methodology versus like just throw it up against the wall and see if it sticks. So it's that first, software second. And what we also do, and kind of what you saw, Greg, let me talk about it. So we have kind of developed this like John Martinez version of texting, of texting psychology. How do we turn, conversations around? How do we get through, to people that nobody else does? Because the problem is that everybody treats it as an RVM with VAs on there, and the results speak for themselves. We get, our average is 2,000 to 3,000 texts to deal, but it's because of how the software designed. There's some other platforms out there, but again, ours is designed specifically, and it's completely different to match that approach of where you're able to get the highest conversion. You don't run out of data or run through data like crazy, and then you're like, what do I do now? But it's also, again, if I give you the platform, it's only half of it. The ongoing sales training we provide and kind of our best practices webinars that we do bi-weekly, along with comes with it. It's really the secret sauce. And that's because, again, I'm an actual user. We use it in house. We have 4 people on it that are doing it. And we're able to get a lot of stuff that, everybody else necessarily doesn't convert or they pass up on, right? And the system is designed specifically around that. Aside from being like very easy to use, it's common sense where you have, intuitive kind of design logic where you have all your messages available. You can see all conversations. You're able to immediately distinguish if it's a hot, or you put something in a drip, if it's an absentee. The chat box opens up, you have property research right there. So you have everything all on one platform for prospecting. We don't push anything into a CRM until we are actually talking about a contract, because people go ghost all the time. If you push them to a CRM, we take them off that conversation, continuity of the conversation. Dude, you text them from a different number, like, I don't know who this is anymore, right? Versus like, hey, I'm still following up with you, right? And you have 5 or 10 messages that have been exchanged.
Yeah. No, it's so true, man. And I think what you just kind of shared was gold, because a lot of people, like you said, it's they have that wrong expectations. Like they're thinking like with the RVMs, like I don't really like RVMs personally. I don't think they're that effective. I just think they're kind of just kind of, I don't know.
Like motivation cures.
Yeah, it's like low hanging fruit marketing. It's like, you know what I mean? But with the texting, it's like, I think a big reason people make mistakes texting is like they think that if they send out a bunch of messages and they don't have someone who's, like I said, going to help sell their house, or they're going to jump off a cliff. Like they're like, oh, it doesn't work. But
Right.
The way that I've used launch control and I've gotten a lot of leads from it. And it's like the way that you have the system work is like, it takes a lot of those people who you think aren't deals, and you're just opening up that conversation to where you can go back and forth. And like really the like you said, the secret sauce is really in that sales process within the texting, not just the texting, because, I think a lot of people, they'll dump a bunch of texts out. Right. People saying never text me again, and like, oh, this doesn't work. But the way that your system works, it's a lot different than a lot of other platforms out there. And that's what gives you guys, that competitive advantage. It's like you said, 3,000 texts to a deal. I think the industry standard is probably like 10 or 11,000 texts per deal, or whatever the case is.
Same number, yeah.
And it's like, man, that's just how you burn through a lot of data sets, so that it's very interesting. And what would you say in terms of, let's kind of take the texting and add another layer to it now. What would you say is your kind of your best performing, I guess, audience or list that you're putting into your platform? Like what are you seeing, just at least maybe in your area or just just nationwide? What is kind of converting a little bit better than others?
Yeah. So 2 different schools of thought, right? There's the broad list and there's the niche, right? So I'll unpack it this way. So the broad list on standby that are always available to grab something. And those primarily being absentee, even though I think absentee is being destroyed depending on the market you're in. Like you send something else for absentee, you're going to be like, dude, I get 20 of these a day. But we have the training to how to turn those around, that type of thing, right? All the time. And nobody else does, right? They're just like, all right, next, delete, DNC. But they're the broad list, right? So it's anything to do with equity, vacants, it's the absentee ones. It's it's the common sense stuff, right? It's like, what do you know, what you may mail, that kind of stuff. It's the broad stuff. And then you have the niche, right? So I have my niche campaigns and I have my broad stuff. So the guys will run through niche stuff. And niche stuff could be, again, it's maybe market dependent, but like, everything from water liens to pre-foreclosures to foreclosures to getting, as much of this granular data that's very limited, and you may get replenished on a weekly, maybe monthly, maybe daily basis, right? You go on that like it's priority 1, right? You clear those out first. And then typically those should be highest performing because, again, there's some kind of a pain point. It may be stacked, it may not. We're working on some pretty crazy concepts that will be basically just plugged in and you're able to go after from a niche stuff with launch control. But it's having those 2, right? And it's as soon as the niche one's depleted, then you go into your broad stuff and keep working that because it's always there. So that's been the best approach for us. But it's, again, in the end, it's like, how do you best convert those people that are responding to you? How are you capturing them? Or you have a drip system that's inside your software, right? Then it comes down to really refining it and the follow-up game.
That's the key, man. It's the follow-up game and just setting the right expectations. And that's something I like how you shared that. It's almost like a motivation funnel. You have the really niche stuff like, vacant tax delinquent code violations, but like there's only so many of those in any specific market, even in like a big market like California or in like, Texas or whatever. But then you go into the smaller niche, vacant houses, absentee owners, then there's the broad, equity sellers, and just kind of working that system. And that's interesting, man. It's really, I think the texting thing, I have one more question on texting, and then we'll start to wrap the show up here, is like, in terms of, I think a lot of these new media channels, like RVM texting, et cetera, there's stuff coming up like, everyone's like, oh, well, what if the carriers block them or whatever? And like, I think your software is unique because it's not a software where it's like, it's not auto texting. Don't you have to manually push the buttons? And why does that, like, how does the whole, like the way that you're just like designed that with the batch dripping, how does that number one, stay compliant? And obviously we know that you're not an attorney and I'm not an attorney, but how does that help make everything more compliant? Because that's something that a lot of people get scared about with texting. It's like, oh, auto shoot, but yours is
exactly. And I think everybody's heard a horror story too with RVM and people getting some kind of litigation or that
serious litigation.
Reality. And the other thing is like I'm sure you've heard, everybody's heard like, like some kind of like robot dialer or robot calling, like the FTC's after it. The government's on that, right? And that's what shows up on the news. So basically the software is TCPA compliant, meaning that you do have to click to send, but it's usually a very overthought concept because you can literally, if you like Google like, mouse clicking or something like that counter, you can do about 100 clicks in 20 seconds, right? You can have your VA do it. It doesn't matter. So you can technically send 300 messages in about a minute, maybe just over. So usually it's like, well, I'll be clicking there all day. No, it's like, no, like mouse clicking is very fast. Now, do you have to do it? Do we have to do it? It doesn't matter. The point of the matter is that it's compliant because there's a manual intervention and you're sending it out manually. It's the same thing if you're cold calling without using compliant software for, whatever list you're doing. Cell phones kind of fall in the same category. You can't just robo dial that. You can't just auto call us because that's the same concept. So landlines are different, right? But in order to stay compliant, so we have that embedded, meaning that's TCPA compliant. You have to click, but it's a very, again, short amount of time that you're spending doing that. It's
very short. Very short. It's like
quick. Exactly. Yeah. But in the end, we also have a litigator scrub that's built in. So we have script tracing built in. We have a litigator scrub built in, meaning that any list that you upload automatically goes through Blacklist Alliance, which is the authority in this space. They'll automatically remove anybody that's flagged as a litigator. So for example, Morgan & Morgan, huge litigator like here in Florida and Tampa. Anybody that's associated, not just with the firm or anybody that's associated with the attorney, like family members, that kind of stuff, they go 5 levels deep and you'll see it in our software where it's being pulled out. Meaning that you can't stop people from suing you, Greg, but you can prevent it as much as you can. Meaning that even if you're in the right, you're using compliance software, and let's say you're just kind of texting them, look, I'm looking to buy a house. It's me, Greg, the investor. Like, I don't know shit for shit about regulation. I'm a regular person. It doesn't mean you still can't get sued. But like what we do is we try to take that off the table as much as possible. So when we upload a list of like 5K prospects, and I see 41 litigators removed from there, that means, like the list was seeded some way, somehow. And a lot of people don't look into that enough to make sure that they're not causing themselves unnecessary, headaches and litigation.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I'm glad we kind of touched on that to wrap up the whole texting part, because that's something that, people get interested in and they're scared to do it. But, obviously your software solves that problem. And, the whole manual thing, it just makes it more legitimate. And because it is legit, it's like you're literally pushing the button and that's compliant with the TCPA. The other ones that are frowned upon are the ones where it's like you hit send broadcast and it's like MailChimp basically. It's like just shotgun. So let's start to wrap the show up. So, obviously we talked about texting, how you, kind of built your business really quickly, with your background that you came from. So, let's kind of conclude the show with, if you got to give some, you've learned a lot, obviously over the last year and a half, you've grown quickly. What would your best kind of final advice be for people, maybe if they're successful already and they want to kind of ramp up to the next level, or if they're brand new, they haven't done a deal yet? What's like your best kind of overall advice you could leave with the listeners?
Don't overcomplicate shit. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't go to 50 meetings. Don't go to 20 masterminds. Pick one, credible one. Pick one, stick with it. Pick 2 or 3 complementary marketing channels, meaning that you have a list, right? You can mail that list, you can cold call it, and if you have the numbers, you can text it as well. So you have one overhead cost. You have the list, you have maybe the script tracing involved, but you're able to recycle the list. Stick to something until you perfect it. Stop going to 50 meetings. Stop doing multifamily when you've done 2 deals that are single family. Just don't do that, because we're being bombarded and there's lots of value in a lot of stuff that's out there, but people are being pulled in so many directions. Will they execute this much?
Man, I am such a believer in that. They're going, they're going an inch deep and a mile wide, and
Right.
they're not seeing traction. And that's why I'm a big believer in like get good at one thing, drill deep, and then once you're freaking cranking in that department, then you can move on when you
Right.
have, obviously revenue and productivity from those efforts. So, Aaron,
To
man,
add, Greg, to add to that, just I think this is a big takeaway. This is what I did, and I think will help a lot of your listeners that are kind of in this category. I think people know what they're doing, and I think once you've kind of listened to somebody that know what they're doing, or they've found, maybe like a mentor or a credible source,
mm-hmm.
shut off the noise. I unfollow everybody on Instagram, all the gurus, all the people that do a lot of phone shaking on Instagram stories, right?
Yeah.
Unfollow all of them. Focus on executing, like hit your goal, 2, 3, 4 deals a month, and then maybe start following back up, because you'll never let that noise. Look, we're human. It's always going to distract you. If you unfollow them, trust me, you're not going to miss out on anything. What will allow you to do is quiet things down and focus on your business versus being distracted more and being pulled into other events where you're not able to execute because you're just being spread too thin, like we said.
Man, that's golden advice. It's never been shared on the show before. It's like focus, 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 and unfollow all the noise out there, because it sometimes, actually most of the time, it does probably more harm than good, because it's like you're like, oh my God, he's crushing it. I suck. I'm the worst. And then that screws up your daily actions, which are going to actually lead you to success. So, man, that is some great advice. So if people wanted to, number one, get in touch with you or find out how to get access to Launch Control, which is your texting software, what would be probably the best email and then the best website they can check out?
Yeah, so Launch Control is the best way to get in touch with me, launchcontrol.us. And we are limited per market, so it's not like, it's not a scarcity thing, but we do have a proprietary algorithm, and it doesn't make sense for me to have 20 people in San Diego using the software, because deliverability and everything else that makes our software much more unique. So launchcontrol.us. My email that I share with my project manager support guy, it's support@launchcontrol.us. We also have a chat icon, so you can get in touch with me anyway. You can guys look me up on Facebook if you want. Launch Control is also on there as well. And yeah,
Awesome.
I'm off IG, so
That's
don't.
it. He's low key. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, Aaron, thanks so much for hopping on the show today. I'm sure the listeners got a lot of value, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Greg. Appreciate it.
Yeah.